welcome to Lost Gotham TV. We took a little break there, a couple of weeks where I wasn't able to record videos. There's been a lot going on, both in my professional life, personal life, all of that stuff. So I'm not going to waste any time talking about it now. I'm going to jump into the latest book review, which is Richard Laymon's The Stake. And what to say about this book? I'm a big vampire fan. You know, I love vampires and werewolves, those traditional horror characters. I love all of those types of archetypes. But vampires had a special place for me. Lost Boys is still, to this day, my favorite movie. And I'm going to start over. Hello and welcome to Lost Gotham TV. In this episode, we are going to be reviewing the Richard Laymon book, The Stake. And what to say about this book? I love vampire stories and vampire movies. To this day, Lost Boys is still my favorite, one of my favorite movies. Probably my favorite vampire movie, closely followed by From Dusk Till Dawn, simply because of the amazing action and stuff that it has going on. But anyway, The Stake is a lot of fun. I read this one kind of a few books in after discovering Richard Laymon, and the basic premise is that a writer, okay, so we see the return of that literary theme that runs throughout all of Richard Laymon's books, where many of his characters are writers, librarians, English majors, things like that. There's always that kind of literary allusion running through a lot of his books. And so Larry Dunbar is the lead character, and basically himself, his wife, and their neighbor and the neighbor's wife, they all go out to investigate a ghost town in California. And basically, and this is on the cover, so no spoilers here, but they find the body, sort of a desiccated, mummified body of what appears to have been a beautiful blonde woman, laying in a coffin, hidden under some stairs in an abandoned building inside of this abandoned town. And over the course of the book, there's this kind of question of, kind of what if you pull the stake out of the body of this thing, would the vampire come back to life? Because there's so many different universes, worlds, where different things, think about Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something like that, where if you stab them in the chest with a wooden stake, and you puncture their heart, they turn to dust. So some of those things can be a little far-fetched, but the part of this story actually harkens back to Nightmare Lake, one of the earlier books that I reviewed, one of his first published books, which was a small children's book, where again the protagonists come across some remains, and in the case of Nightmare Lake, it was more of a skeletal kind of remains, but there's this question of, if you pull out the stake, would the vampire come back? And so I won't say whether or not they do or they don't. And there's obviously a lot more story going on in The Stake. It's a much bigger book. Mr. Laymon had obviously hit his stride at this point in his career. around the late 80s going into the early 90s, where he was far more comfortable writing longer books. He had honed his ability to flesh out characters and take us inside of their heads and their thought processes, and slow things down a little bit, but in a very successful way. You know, unlike Stephen King, you know, I've read so many Stephen King books, and some of them are good, some of them not so much. And one of the reasons why I prefer Laymon over someone like King or even Kuntz is that for me there's a readability there and a consistency in the work, even when the consistency wavers a little bit and you question the characters and the motivations and the story developments. There's still a general level of campiness and fun to them that I just love. And even though we're definitely getting into the territory of the books where he was paid more money. He's getting paid by the word, I would assume, by this point. And he's turning in these, 350, 450, 500 page novels. It's giving you a lot more meat to chew on with his books. And so the Stake is a good example of that, where we have some interesting character development. We've got a couple of different kind of storylines going on at different times in the book. Primarily, we are following the author and his curiosity, his infatuation that builds with the mystery of who was this woman and who was it who put this stake into her chest. And obviously she's not a vampire because vampires aren't real, but what if they were? And so there's a lot of that fun stuff going on there. If you like vampire stories, I think you should like this. It's not your Anne Rice Interview with a Vampire, your frilly collared, lacy, frou-frou, I don't know, just wimpy vampire. It's a lot more than that. It's something in the same vein, no pun intended, as the Charlotte Harris, I can't think what the series of books is called, but the Sookie Stackhouse books. And yeah, I mean, you've got sex, you've got violence, you have the potential for supernatural horror in this book. And so there's just a lot going on. It's a well-rounded book that should touch on a lot of bases for different people. So The Stake, I think, is definitely a solid read. It's not one of his best, but it's far from his worst. It's a good, solid novel. All right. That being said, I'm going to wrap things up here. If you have any comments, suggestions, questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below right after you hit that like button. And I thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.